Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Sagittarius and your moon in Scorpio. Oh boy, I thought I had already done this one, but I guess I had done the opposite version. So when we're talking about the sun, we're talking about the masculine element, meaning, well, the element is the element of fire, and it is masculine, and it is about our burning, I guess you could say desires, but ambition. And, it's extroverted energy. So it's like we're showing off to the world what we have, and it's outwardly directed. And so um, it's this is why the sun is the most important part of our astrological influences, because it represents the core of our personality, and that includes all the things that we think about, what we enjoy, what we aspire to become, all of that. So that's that, and I'm going to go into that, but I just want to contrast it with the moon, which is the emotional nature. And when the moon is in a water sign, which is already emotional, that really intensifies things. And this would go for any moon sign. But now we're talking about Scorpio, and Scorpio is a special, interesting sign to be as a moon sign. The moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus, which is the opposite sign of Scorpio. So the moon in Scorpio is said to be in its detriment, and that's because of that. And so the qualities that we associate with the best of the moon are not happening in Scorpio. And I would dare say that this is the most difficult moon position to have. In my particular case, I have the sun in Sagittarius, and I have the moon in Virgo, but it's in conjunction with Pluto. So that can be similar to that. And so I feel like I can speak on this sun-moon combination without actually having the moon in Scorpio to some degree. And it's only been through doing these types of videos that I've really, realized my own stuff that has been there that I really just took as par for the course. So when the moon is in Scorpio, a person may have gone through emotional trauma in their life. It's not that we all cannot do so, regardless of sun or moon sign, but how it affects somebody is certainly going to vary. Even within one family, it can impact one person way more than another. And because of the nature of Scorpio, the ferocity that Scorpio can represent, it might not seem on the surface that this individual has gone through that kind of ordeal. And because the sun is in Sagittarius, that can also help to make the person less likely to fall into some of those darker elements, because there is a macabre association with Scorpio, or a fascination, I should say. Some of you may also have Scorpio inner planets because of the proximity of Sagittarius. So you might have Venus in Scorpio. And Venus can be the type of art that really grabs you. You might love really dark types of paintings, gothic, like scary movies and all of that stuff. And dark colors and dramatic, like maroon, I think is associated with Scorpio and things like that. Of course, I'm sure black is up there. But this, suffice it to say that this can be a Sagittarian who is not what we would typically think about with Sag. So the Sag may be kind of like a little bit closed off, not so gregarious as a typical Sag is. You have to look to the rising sign as well, because that can really speak on the person's behavior when they are in a social setting, or the kind of impression that they give towards others, especially on a more superficial level. Also, those inner planets, because if they're in Scorpio, baby, that's going to be much more intense. That's going to intensify things. Plus, if they're in if you have like the Libra, it might lighten things too. So if you have Venus in Libra, Mercury in Libra, no, you can't have Mercury in Libra. It can only be in, yeah, it can't be that far away. But like Venus in Libra, Mars in Libra, things like that. Something that is less intense, or whatever you want to call it, more on the shadow side of things, it can be a lot more lighthearted. Because when I say shadow, that's Scorpio's expertise is the shadow. Scorpio rules the 8th house, and that is all about what lies beneath. And the shadow deals with the uncomfortable emotions that people do not want to acknowledge that they have, because, they think it's bad to have rage or vengefulness. And it's interesting because with this combination, you may not be as concerned about that, because you might feel that, hey, there's a reason for it, especially if you have like Mars in Libra and you're just like that social justice warrior. I shouldn't say social justice, but the warrior for justice, and you really want to make things fair in life. And if you feel that you've been treated unfairly, or somebody that you love has been treated unfairly, and actually it could be like a social justice warrior. Maybe you feel you strongly identify with a certain group in society, and you feel that they have been treated unfairly, and you're trying to fight on their behalf, that kind of thing. So it can play out in different ways, and you have to look at where the sun is also. Because, for instance, even though I don't have the moon in Scorpio, I mentioned that conjunction I have, and I also have the sun in the 8th house, and that's Scorpio's house. So some of you may have the sun in the 8th house, and that would definitely give you a more scorpionic signature overall. This combination has in common a spiritual side to them, or maybe even more than a side. Maybe it's a spiritual foundation. Scorpio rules the 8th house, which can be metaphysics and the occult. Astrology and tarot are connected to the 8th house. And the secrets of the universe. Scorpio is a secretive sign. Sag rules the 9th house. To me, that's organized religion. That's the organized systems of philosophical thought that guide our life, but kind of guide our life on the outer level, on the masculine level. This is a masculine sign, Sagittarius. Scorpio is a water sign, so it's a feminine sign. It's internal. It's mysterious. It's like the magician versus the high priestess. Okay? So, there's the 8th house can be magic and shamanism, earth religion. That esoteric type of arts. The 9th house can be the broad philosophical spectrum. And you have both of these together. 9th house can be higher learning, meaning universities. So the Sag who becomes a professor, you might end up doing something. You could do world religion, but you might do something that involves I guess it could be world religion if you include the indigenous, right? Because that's what I see with the eighth house. All of those types of indigenous religions are dealing with the earth and shamanism, personal alchemy. It's much more. It's more open ended. So, the ninth house is connected to the law, and it's funny because I never really connected the ninth house with the law. I always thought of the seventh house because the seventh house is like the legal. I would say like the legal system, the courtroom, and all of that. And the ninth house to me is the law itself. So just like with religion, the dogma of each religion is the ninth house, you know? Same thing in a different area. And so because of that, if you are drawn to the law as a Sag, and if you are, you might actually have, Mars in Libra or Mercury in Libra, something like that. But you can't have Mercury in Libra. Why do I keep saying that? But Mars in Libra, let's put it that way. But regardless, you might be motivated to do it because of something that happened to you that has stayed with you emotionally. And it could be even like a form of vengeance that is legalistic, or on the legal side. That let's say somebody was abused as a child by a parent, physically abused, and you become an advocate for children who need to be removed from the home or whatever, and you're doing it because you think about that and how it affected you. So the other things that I think anything with spiritual practices is a no-brainer with this combination. I think maybe anything where you are personally affected by something, like I mentioned being a lawyer, but it could be being a teacher and something happening to you growing up that made you realize that not all children are given the same kind of attention or treatment, and that spurs you on. The thing to watch out for with the moon in Scorpio is a tendency to lack forgiveness, to feel that your heart is hardening, because Scorpio is a fixed water sign. So it's emotional and it's fixed so that it can be very stubborn with its emotions. And this is in the moon position, so it's even more so the case where the emotions are heightened even more so. Not that they need to be in the sign of Scorpio, suffice it to say. So I think that this is a very complicated combination because Sag is a puppy dog and very open, and yet there's this kind of, I don't like to use the word dark energy that is swirling around, but I do feel that sometimes that can be the case, not necessarily because of anything that you have done, but because of the influences that you have been exposed to. Sex is part of the eighth house, or Scorpio, I should say, and yet it can be of a dark variety sometimes. And so whether it's sexual abuse, some kind of a thing. And here's another thing to mention that's very important is that Scorpio, that when you have your moon in a particular sign, it can indicate the way that your mother behaved. So it doesn't mean that the mother is that particular sign, but she might have behaved like a Scorpio in some way. And this can mean a mother who is very, smothering in some way to her child. The mother might be very it's almost like trying to possess that person. That's how smothering I'm speaking about. That's how bad it can be. Or something where she is, in the case of like if you're a female, that when you were becoming a teenager and you were developing, and maybe there were, um, the the opposite sex was looking at you, and she felt this sense of, um, envy, and she tried to be competitive with you in that sense. Um, this is, for Scorpio, this is more about power than anything else. So you might have had power struggles with your mother and felt that she was overbearing, like, but on a psychic level. And that, and also her own behavior, or what she was doing in her own life, that might have impacted you very, adversely. So I was going to say, like, as I was talking about the sexual angle, is if a girl is becoming a teenager and men are looking at her, maybe the mother, if she's not with your father, and she was, you know, feeling that her man was looking at you or something, and then she's trying to, accuse you of being, like, if he, um, came on to you, or actually, God forbid, actually did something to you of a sexual nature, and you told her about it, and she blamed you, and she made you out to be in the wrong. Those kinds of things do happen, and it's horrible. It's horrible when they happen. So that's one of those psychodynamics that can occur sometimes when, um, the moon is in Scorpio. Also, if you're a male and the mother, she didn't have the father, if your father wasn't in your life for whatever reason, and that can even include death, but then you became the man of the house, and you began to feel like you were more like her husband, like she was confiding in you, and she was making you, it was like she was replacing your father with you. That can have a very damaging effect. It doesn't have to be like straight up incest, but it can be emotional incest, in a sense, where you're no longer that child that has a mother who is, respectful of, the positions that you both hold. And that can affect your relationships with women, if you are, interested in women. If you're interested in, the same sex, I don't know how I have no idea how that would impact you. But it doesn't really matter, ultimately, because it can still be traumatic. But I was speaking of how it could impact your, romantic relationships in the future. So, yeah, well, it's so funny because until I realized what my influences were, I was always wondering, whenever I do these readings, how I always get into the most intense things, and now I realize why. And this is what I would say for anybody who has this combination, is that you probably are really, interested in the nitty gritty, and psychological machinations of other people. You're not somebody who's just, skimming the surface of life, and not that, Sagittarians ever do that, but, sometimes they can. There are, I know, Sagittarians who are much more, wanting to be more of the animal part of themselves than the man. Sag is half animal and half man, and the animal part is more of the party animal, type. Somebody like Jim Morrison, who was a Sag, he exhibited both sides. He could be wild, and he could be very, intellectual. And the animal part can be free and can just be like very authentic. So it's not to say that that part's bad, but I was just kind of joking. But some Sages are deeper than others, and you are of the deep variety. In terms of, I've already talked about professions. In terms of, oh, and one more profession that I think this combination would excel in. Yeah, it could be like psychotherapy, being a therapist, but I really think of the life coach because fire signs, they want to encourage other people, and they don't necessarily want to just kind of keep talking about the past. Fire energy is very progressive. It looks to the future, and yet dealing with those shadow elements at the same time. You know, that combination. So I could see, um, doing in-depth life coaching, perhaps. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that that resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.